You ever feel like you're stuck, like you're not really going anywhere, or you don't really have a purpose in life and you have no real direction? Anytime you make some positive progress in your life, it just seems so minuscule that it doesn't even matter. You're simply down in the dumps. Well, I know I felt that way in the past, and I know others have too. I made a YouTube post just a few days ago and I received this comment. I keep hearing to build and focus on your so-called purpose. But what if there is none? But also having the feeling of being stuck and deserving more from life, but don't know what road to take. And after reading this comment, it really kind of bundles down to three components of this one question. So we're going to tackle them one by one. Let's start with your purpose. I feel as though, as a human, as someone a part of the human race, we all have one centralized purpose that will make us all feel fulfilled, at least to some degree. And I think it really boils down to this: service. Now, this is kind of a strange word because it can mean a lot of different things, but I'll give you an example as to what I feel service is. One example would be whenever I wake up in the morning, if I can do a simple act to make my wife's day just a little bit easier from the jump, then maybe I should make that decision. Maybe I take a few minutes out of my day to do the dishes or make my kids breakfast or something, so whenever she does get up or she finishes her morning routine, she doesn't have to worry about it and she can go on to some other important things. That's service. Whenever you go get your morning coffee at a Starbucks and you see someone who has a walker or a cane walking behind you, you open the door and you let them walk in front of you and you say, "Have a good morning." And they say, "Thank you." That's service. You go to the grocery store on a Tuesday evening and you see an elderly person struggling to get a case of water in the back of their car, and you say, "Hey, can I help you with that?" That's service. Service doesn't always mean volunteering down at your local soup kitchen or your local church charity or something like that. Although you absolutely can do those things, and those will certainly make you feel fulfilled because you're doing some good in the world. But even the small acts of service just throughout the day can really make a big difference. Be the change you want to see in the world. That's your purpose. Now, everyone has their own personal purpose, and it's really up to you to figure out what that is. But while you're trying to figure out who you are as a person and what you want to do with the rest of your life, what your purpose is, you can be partaking in the general services that will make you feel fulfilled on a day-to-day. When you see someone in need, you help them. When you see a perceived need that hasn't become a problem, you solve that problem before it becomes a problem and you really help someone out ahead of time. Now to the second part of this comment. You feel like you're stuck. Now, when people feel stuck, they tend to want to make some changes, and sometimes that means a rather monumental change, something big like a career change. Sometimes it means you need to change a multitude of things in your daily life to give you the motivation to press forward to get out of this rut that you're in. So, like I said, for some people that could mean a career change. If you're working at your local Papa John's, maybe you go and apply at a Walmart or a Target and get a change of scenery. Maybe that will give you rejuvenation and the push to keep moving forward. Maybe it's something as simple as changing your diet. The food that you consume makes a big impact on your mental well-being. If you're only consuming junk food or fast food, you're going to feel sluggish, you're going to feel tired, and when you're feeling tired, you tend to feel unmotivated. Whenever you make a change and you start eating healthier foods or making better choices for your body, you tend to feel more naturally energized and motivated. And sometimes it's just as simple as that. If you're stuck, look around to your environment. What are things that are within your control that you can change? What are things that you're doing on the regular that you can cease doing? And what are things that you can start doing that would make a positive impact on your life right now? Sometimes it's just the snowball effect. It starts as a snowflake and you make a little ping pong sized snowball that turns into a baseball sized snowball, and as you keep rolling, it becomes a bowling ball, and that bowling ball becomes a basketball, and that basketball becomes a beach ball, and so on and so forth until you have the base for your snowman. Sometimes it's just as simple as that. Whenever you make some small changes in your life, it just kind of gives you the traction, it gives you the momentum, and it gives you the motivation to carry on so you don't feel like you're stuck. Sometimes it's just a matter of forcing yourself out of that rut. It takes discipline, it takes decision making, and it takes sometimes just some hard choices. Not everything needs to be a monumental change, but any change is good change if it's for the betterment of yourself. Now for the final part of this comment. You feel like you deserve more from life, and you don't know which road to take. Now, honestly, this can be kind of a dangerous path, if you ask me. Feeling entitled like you deserve more from life can be really inhibiting on your progress, I'll just say. And I think it can often just take an outlook change. Sometimes you get dealt a shorthand just because of circumstances, and that's out of your control. But you don't have to stay in those circumstances. You don't have to stay in that rut that we talked about before. You have the option to make those small changes for the betterment of yourself. Life gives you what you give it. If you're lazy, if you're a doom scroller, if you don't really make any effort in your life, that's just kind of the results you're going to yield. You reap what you sow, in a way. If you work hard and you make really positive changes in your life and you're constantly working for the betterment of yourself, even though it might not be the most massive of results overnight, it's still positive. It's still change that you want to see. It's still something that's going to yield a good outcome. It just might not be in the way that you think. And sometimes that's just what life is. It's unpredictable, and you don't always get what you want. And that's okay. Sometimes that's better for you. You may want something, but it's not what you need. And the universe or God or whatever you believe in gives you what you need, not what you want all the time. So now you're stuck at a crossroads. You're at an impasse. You have some decisions to make, and you don't know which road to take. Honestly, sometimes being stagnant and stopping and thinking fully before you make any decisions can be the best possible result, truthfully. Maybe you need to go back to school, get back into college. Maybe you need to make a career change. But you don't want to make those decisions. You don't want to make those rash decisions, those big life-changing decisions quickly. You need to give yourself some time to stew. So whenever you're making those snowball effect changes and you're working from that little snowflake all the way into a snowman, you could be thinking about where you want to be in 5, 10, 15 years. And just because there's multiple roads you can take doesn't mean you're going to be locked into that road whenever you finally choose a path. You're not tied down to something forever. I'll use this as an example. There's this misconception that whenever you buy a house, you're locked in and that's where you're going to be living for who knows how long. And that's why a lot of people just choose to rent because they don't want the commitment. But what people fail to realize is you don't have to stay in that house. You have the option to sell. It just might be a little bit of a more convoluted or difficult scenario to free yourself from that financial burden or that commitment that you had made, but you can still make the choice to leave it behind. You can still move on. Same thing applies with your career. Same thing applies with your schooling. There's people who went to school for a certain profession, and after being in that profession for X amount of time, they decided they hated it. So they went back to school, they chose a different profession, and they're doing much better now. Sometimes that's what it takes. Now, I'm not saying that's what you need to do, and I'm not necessarily advising you on the decisions that you should make, but everything takes evaluation, and you don't have to fully commit forever to the choice that you make. So if you ever feel like you're stuck in a rut or you have no purpose, look around you. See what's in your control. See what small decisions that you can make for the betterment of yourself that will snowball or blossom into something massive. And life is rather difficult, but you're never tied down to the decisions that you make forever. There's always a way out. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes it's the most difficult thing that you've ever had to do, but there's options for you. You don't have to feel like you're stuck forever. And that's all I have for you today. Hopefully I answered your question, and hopefully this video helps you to some capacity. This is just my 2 cents on the topic, and that's that. Bye now.